What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is the Science Dispatch podcast. I'm Cameron English. That's Dr. Chuck Dinerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health. Chuck, it's great to see you.
Nice to see you, too. It's getting to be more, well, it's spring year, but it looks spring year outside, but it doesn't quite feel that way. That's what I'd like to report. It's still a little cool for my old blood.
I'm jealous, man, because here on the West Coast, spring has sprung and the allergies are in full swing. The pollen is polluting my existence.
Oh, we have that. It's just the snot tends to freeze up.
Ah, I see. So that's unpleasant. You know, the good thing about it, though, is I get to go outside with my kids, get to walk my dogs, and you just take in the simpler things in life. It's a good thing, right?
Fair enough. Okay, all good.
So we're doing something a little bit different today. We are discussing an article that you can read on the website, but it's a book review by our colleague Katie Shaletta. And I don't know how to describe her, Chuck. Katie basically serves as an umpire for wellness gimmicks. So if something comes across her desk and it's popular on TikTok or Instagram, take this supplement, drink this whatever, this exercise, she just digs into it and tries to determine if there's any science behind it. And most of the time there isn't, but when there is, she goes, there might be a there. We just need more evidence before we can do that. So she does helpful work, real practical stuff. And here she's reviewing this book called Beyond Wellness. This is by an author named Liz Buchar, I think is how you pronounce her name. But she's a scholar of religions, and she's in this book she's trying to give or trace the religious and spiritual roots of these different wellness practices. So yoga, Alcoholics Anonymous is another example, psychedelics, which we can get into. But the point is she's trying to explain where these come from, intellectually at least. Like where did they originate, and why do people engage? Why have people engaged in them historically? And she gets into the problem of modern people sort of using these different practices like a wellness salad bar. Like, I'm going to do a little yoga, and then I'll take a little ibogaine, the jungles of Peru, and then I'll take this supplement, something like that. And so I think the point in Katie's article, maybe you can elaborate because you actually edited it, the article, but I think the point she's getting at is intentionality is a good thing. Understanding why you do what it is you do, like the diet you follow. Why do you do it? Do you do it because someone you follow on Instagram told you to do it, or do you understand the workings of it to a certain extent? And so I think on that basis, even though I get the impression she disagrees with certain things in the book, she gives it a relatively positive review and says, we approach this topic from different angles. I'm coming at it as a public health scientist. She's coming at it as an expert on religion, but ultimately we end up saying intentionality in how you do something is what matters. Is that more or less the...
I think that was a good summary of the direction of what Katie was talking about and what the author was talking about. I think what's interesting to me is the conversations that it inspired here in the back offices of the American Council of Science and Health on whether this was how much woo was built into some of these practices. And what I have a good understanding of why the author would have said this is that a lot of the wellness practices do have their roots in more Eastern philosophies and Eastern styles of wellness, but they've used the Western scientific approach of breaking everything down into little components and then taking the components that they wanted rather than the whole. And, so yoga, which we talked about, yoga is a perfect example, or meditation. So yoga is in service to meditation in reality. If you look at the Eastern philosophy, the whole purpose of yoga is for you to be able to sit comfortably still and meditate for hours. And so all of those yoga poses are designed to bring balance and strength to your spine and to your ability to sit quietly so that your mind can be stilled. But what we've done in America is we've turned yoga into an athletic activity, and to see who could turn themselves into what shaped pretzel for what length of time. And I think that that's part of what the author is getting at, is that we've lost sight of the fact that when we talk about mindfulness is another one of these great keywords that is part and parcel of meditation, but meditation is a daily, lifelong practice designed to get you to focus on the moment. And we've managed to cut all of those little pieces away and turn it into some westernized version that is more easily consumed in our wellness diet.
So is there value in an approach like this? You're a physician. So now I don't know if you subscribe to any of the ideologies she outlines in this book. My guess would be no. I could be wrong, but
you could be wrong.
Okay,
you would be wrong. You would be wrong.
Okay, I would be wrong to say that you are a Buddhist or anything like that. So is it from the outside? Then can you say it would be better for my patient to understand why I'm telling them to eat a certain way, right? Like if they can attach a religious connotation to the way that they eat or live, does that help you treat them better? You know what I'm asking?
No, I don't know that I don't know that if that bringing a religious idea to them will make them more compliant with treatment. On the other hand, if I have a patient that's deeply religious, it's not wrong for me to try and show them how that their religious beliefs also coincide with some treatment in medicine. The very idea, that the body is the temple of your soul. Pretty straightforward religious position. So, you can't litter up the temple. We got to clean up the temple a little bit here, just as a way to argue that. What I found in my own philosophical wanderings, I wouldn't even describe it as a journey. That would be too much. Is that a lot of these Eastern or what seems to be far out concepts can be approached from a scientific point, and you get very much to the same kind of place. So here's another example. Auras. Now, if somebody comes to you and says, you're just a great guy, I see a purple aura around you, I'm out of there. We're not doing any kind of aura medicine. Okay? On the other hand, there's a lot of good physics that talk about the electromagnetic spectrum, and there is a range for what we sense. And so there are people that I think that can sense a little bit into the infrared spectrum, and they actually see something that I don't see. And I understand on a scientific basis how they come to say it. So at that point, it's the idea that the words are lost in translation. I'm calling it a change in the electromagnetic spectrum. They're calling it an aura, And so there's that back and forth. So there's a piece coming out that I worked on this week that was fascinating, talking about infrasounds, which are frequencies below human hearing. And they did a study on a group of people, and they played either some calming music or some horror-inspired music to them. And for some of them, they played this infrasound in the background. And for other people, they didn't. And everybody that was exposed to the infrasound was sadder, less engaged, and felt unease, even though it was something that they couldn't hear. So, the argument can be made that, people that come in, the paranormals that come in and see that the house it seems to be haunted, very well might be responding to those infrasounds. That's there. I mean, that's why I think that there's, and we talked about it, is that you can't make this sharp distinction between being religious and being scientific. The Scopes monkey trial stuff, from my point, just doesn't cut it. I think that, when you look at, some people argue that in the end that religion comes down to faith, but so does physics. Nobody's been running into quarks lately. So that at some point they both get to the point where there's some, level of faith, and whether that faith can be inscribed as a set of mathematical equations or can be put on 2 tablets as 10 rules, I don't know that it makes a difference.
So many things, so many rabbits to chase, Dr. Dinerstein, that you've placed in front of me.
Pick a big juicy one.
Yeah, let me get my arrow out here, and we'll go to work. So, I think that's all true. I think it's a very modern concept to divorce science and religion, or science and philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, right? To say that there's the real scientific way to look at the world, where we're objective and everything's empirical, and we've got rulers and beakers, and to say like this is real knowledge, and then over here is this woo-wee kind of spiritual, you can't see it but you believe it anyway. I think that distinction's false, for one thing. And it's also very recent, right? So everyone pretends that this is just the way it's always been. But if you look back into the Middle Ages, for example, you can see that there's these very brilliant people, like Thomas Aquinas, for example, is probably the biggest name. And there's other philosophers as well. They take for granted that science has value in helping us discover things about the world. But they also take for granted, or at least not take for granted is the wrong way, they're actually making rational arguments for God's existence, and they're trying to explain the natural world within this framework. And they talk about how you can see purpose in the natural world, right? Things function according to a set pattern. They appear to have goals, even though they're not conscious, right? Like a cloud is not conscious. But you can see that it behaves according to set laws, seemingly, right? So there's this whole way of looking at it, and again, they're not saying, well, just believe that there's an angel kind of moving the cloud around. It's a very rational, sensible way of looking at things, but it's not materialistic or atheistic, which I think is pretty fascinating. And that reading a book like this, maybe that gets people thinking in a different way, as opposed to.
Yeah, well, I think there's a long history of religious scholars, because that's where scholarship resided, certainly in the Middle Ages, being at the same time natural philosophers, and which was what has become science. I mean, the Vatican has had an observatory sometimes since the 1500s. They still have somebody running an observatory. So it's not that they're anti-science at all. And I think that there is clearly a place for spirituality in our daily existence. You don't have to be a doctor for a long period of time to discover that there are things that are not going to be explained with a lab test or an X-ray or a publication for the New England Journal of Medicine. I mean, it happens to all of us. I mean, I had a woman that was clinically brain dead for 2 or 3 days that woke up and started talking to me a day after I had a conversation with the family about maybe we should, turn the equipment off. And then the next day she's talking to me. She's sitting up and talking to me. This is no way to explain that one away, brother.
I thought you were going to use the M word for a second there, Dr. Dinerstein.
Which would that be?
Miracle.
It is. It is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But the problem with that word is that we tend to use it a lot.
That's true. It's taken on sort of a I guess a simplistic meaning, just something that is improbable.
Right, and to be fair, she was she was a patient in a Catholic hospital, so maybe there's a little bit more in there.
One of the things, and here's all I'll say: I am not the target market for this book. Let me put it that way.
Well, that's fair.
But I think one of the challenges I have with what she's saying is that she's trying to say religion gives these practices a certain kind of meaning. But early on in the book, she identifies herself as a nun, which is someone who has no religious belief in any sense, right? So when she talks about, the religious roots of using ayahuasca in the jungles of South America, she doesn't subscribe to any of those ideas,
underlying,
right?
Okay.
Right. So in other words, what it seems to me she's trying to do is stand outside of all of these traditions and say, you can give meaning to your life by following the roots of these practices. But I am sort of like, I've got my Coke bottle glasses and I'm up here at my university and I'm gonna give the proles a little bit of, spiritual breadcrumbs. But it's not for me, right? You see what I'm getting at? Like,
okay, I hear what you're saying, but that's not how my takeaway.
Okay.
See, my takeaway gets back to that idea of lost in translation.
Okay.
And I think that's an important. It was certainly an important concept for me in understanding spirituality and some religious beliefs, that oftentimes we're talking about the same kinds of things. I mean, certainly when you're talking in this cognitive world about cognition and how we perceive things and so on and so forth, that's a little bit squishier and it doesn't yield immediately to metrics. That it's I can't believe I use this, but we're back to the Indians, the blind Indians feeling the elephant and saying, it's a snake, no, it's a paper thing, no, it's a huge trunk, and because depending on which part they feel, that I think is part and parcel of the message she's delivering. Now, you may be right that she says, it's lost in translation, but I'm going to stay on this side of the fence on this one. But I still think that that's a valid position to share for people that might be interested in delving a little bit deeper into yoga than simply it's a good for your core.
I get what you're saying. I just don't think it holds up, right? So like, let me try to give an example. So like, as a Christian myself, I can read Aquinas, to stick with that example, and I can look at the arguments he makes and I can go, oh, these are valid because they go back to a God that I believe in, right? You see what I'm saying? So the weight of the argument goes to actually believing it or accepting it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Okay. So sitting in my office and smoking pot all day is harmful and unnatural on that view because my mind is for discovering truth, right? I'm supposed to be using my brain to earn a living, to provide for my family, to learn things, ultimately to better understand God. That's ultimately what someone like Aquinas would say. Now, if I'm sitting in my room toking it up all day, I can't do that, contrary to what you know what I'm saying? But that doesn't, that whole line of reasoning makes no sense if I'm at the beginning going, I don't really believe this, but if I play make believe, then I'm, maybe it'll help me. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, yes, I think that she's offering a gateway, and you're already along the path. Okay, maybe we could argue that point, that you didn't come to Aquinas as a revelation overnight. I suspect.
No, that would have been cool though. It just to wake up one day and go, oh,
yeah, but that would put you in a different group. So, so. I'm a big fan of opening up some of those gates and making things more accessible. And if I can show you how where you are may also be the same place I am, even though we're using different words. I think there's an advantage in that, and I think that's the sum and substance of why I thought it was interesting to talk about this conflict between science and religion, which I think is just some artificial thing that has been made up by people in both camps that have their own particular axes to grind.
Yeah, I think that's well said and true enough. There is no conflict. That was superimposed on the discussion by people with agendas for sure.
Yes,
and it happened over a long time. It wasn't an overnight sort of thing. Maybe let's move on as I don't want to spend too much time, but as we wrap up here, one thing that's interesting, and maybe we touched on this a little bit, is that some of these practices, they can still be harmful. So even if you approach them with intentionality and perhaps you have a depth of understanding of where they came from, they're still not good for you, right? So to use the,
yes.
she talks about actually going to, I don't know if it was Peru or Brazil, and doing one of these psychedelics. And she actually, to her credit, she talks about how people go and do this and they're not under medical supervision and they go into cardiac arrest because these drugs are not, these are not gummy bears. These are
right? Yes, these are not your usual gummy. This is not Grandpa's gummy.
Right. This is not watching Hendrix on the lawn with your girlfriend. This is, colorful shapes and anyways. But she talks about the risk that this can pose, and yet maybe it's still worth the risk is basically where she ends up. But I think, in other words, it can still be very harmful, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to watch the arc of psychedelics. I mean, psychedelics started with guided trips, and then became footloose and fancy free for a very long time, and now we're back to guided trips, at the VA.
Yeah. So. Guided trips.
They have these. Even the wellness peddlers of psychedelics will suggest that you're accompanied by somebody on your psychedelic journey. So I think that speaks to both the fact that there is risk involved and the fact that there's a deeper, longer standing cultural context to the use of those drugs other than, wow, Jimi Hendrix sounds fucking amazing. Which could very well be true. But that was not...
He played that guitar upside down. That was nifty.
Right. Well, that's the origin of the 3-hour drum solo. Would be these.
Oh my gosh, man! You know what? You're gonna deeply dislike this, but I just can't stand the '60s. If we could memory hold the counterculture.
Whoa! Listen, dementia is rapidly taking away my memory. There's no reason you need to rush it along by taking 10 great years.
You can take every copy of Yellow Submarine and throw it in a landfill for all I care.
Oh man, that's evil.
Pre-drug Beatles, perfectly fine. Pre-drug, I'm good with it.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, please.
No, go wrap it up, baby.
Let's land the plane. Couple of takeaways, Doc. So maybe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but religion, believing in God, and embracing the scientific method, not enemies. Is that a fair takeaway, would you say?
Absolutely not enemies. And,
okay.
One can reveal the other.
Okay, I like that. Very good. Anything else that people need to know from your big medical brain?
No, nor from my small medical brain. Neither one of them have anything more to add today.
Very good. All right, well, go check out this article. It's on the website. Just look up Katie Shaletta, She's got all kinds of good stuff on there. Follow us on social media. It's at ACSH.org on X. The website is acsh.org. While you're there, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We'll send you the articles we publish, the ones you read, usually the ones we talk about, unless it's something really interesting like this and we just wanted to talk about it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.